Seed oils. You've heard the warnings: they're toxic, they're inflammatory, they're the reason people are gaining weight, getting sick, and feeling worse. And if you spend any time online, you've probably heard the same message over and over again: throw them out, avoid them at all costs, and go back to butter, tallow, or anything that sounds more natural. But is that actually what the science says? Or is this one of those health debates where fear moved faster than the evidence? Today, we're going to slow it all down. We're going to talk about what seed oils actually are, why people are so suspicious of them, where the inflammation claim came from, what researchers have found in real human studies, and where the real concerns actually do belong, because this topic gets flattened into extremes. Either seed oils are poison, or they're perfectly harmless in every form, in every context, no questions asked. And the truth, like it usually is in nutrition, is more nuanced than that. So let's get clear on it. First, what are people even talking about when they say seed oils? Because seed oils sounds like a scientific category, but it really isn't. It's more of a cultural label, a catch-all phrase people use for a group of commonly used vegetable oils, including soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, grapeseed oil, and canola oil. These oils became common because they were relatively inexpensive, widely available, shelf-stable, and easy to use in both packaged foods and home cooking. And nutritionally, they do share some important features. Most of them are rich in unsaturated fats. That means they contain more polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, and less saturated fat, than things like butter, lard, or coconut oil. One of the main fats found in many of these oils is linoleic acid. That matters because linoleic acid is an omega-6 fatty acid. And omega-6 is where a lot of the fear starts. Now, before we go any further, this part is really important. Omega-6 fats are not some strange modern chemical your body doesn't recognize. They are essential fats. Essential means your body cannot make them on its own. You have to get them from food. Your body uses them in cell membranes. It uses them in signaling. It uses them in growth, skin function, brain function, and immune activity. So right away, the idea that omega-6 is automatically bad should raise a red flag. If your body literally needs it, then the conversation cannot be that simple. So where did the inflammation story come from? Here's the basic logic people heard. Linoleic acid can be converted in the body into arachidonic acid. Arachidonic acid can be used to make compounds involved in inflammation. Therefore, eating linoleic acid must drive inflammation. And since seed oils contain linoleic acid, seed oils must be inflammatory. That sounds clean, it sounds scientific, and it sounds scary. But that leap is exactly where the problem begins. Because what can happen in a biochemical pathway is not the same thing as what does happen in a living human body under normal conditions. Your body is not a beaker, it is not a chemistry diagram, it is not a straight pipe where one thing goes in and inflammation comes pouring out the other side. Human physiology is regulated, it is buffered, it is adaptive, and when researchers actually looked at human clinical studies, the simple omega-6 causes inflammation story did not hold up the way people expected. That's the part that often gets left out online. In controlled human studies, higher intake of linoleic acid has generally not been shown to raise common inflammatory markers. That includes markers people love to point to, like C-reactive protein. In some cases, replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats has even been associated with better cardiovascular outcomes. So the idea that seed oils automatically create a state of chronic inflammation in the human body is not supported the way social media often claims. And that doesn't mean every use of these oils is ideal. It just means the most popular accusation is overstated. That distinction matters a lot. Because when people hear doesn't increase inflammation in clinical studies, they think that means the debate is over and every criticism must be nonsense. Not exactly. This is where we need to separate the oil itself from the food environment around it. Because in the real world, people are not arguing about a teaspoon of fresh canola oil used to sauté vegetables at home. They're reacting to the way these oils often show up in modern diets. Inside ultra-processed foods. Inside deep-fried foods. Inside meals that are calorie-dense, hyper-palatable, easy to overeat, and often low in fiber, protein, and micronutrients. And that changes the conversation. A lot of the fear around seed oils is really fear about the modern food system. And honestly, that part is understandable. When people think of seed oils, they are not imagining a carefully cooked home meal. They're imagining fast food fries, chips, packaged snacks, drive-through meals, fried chicken, frozen appetizers, and foods engineered to be hard to stop eating. So when people say, "I cut out seed oils and I felt better," what did they often actually cut out? Not just one ingredient. They cut out a huge amount of ultra-processed food. They probably ate fewer fried foods. They may have eaten more whole foods, more protein, more fruit, more vegetables, more meals cooked at home. Of course they felt better. But that does not automatically prove that seed oils were the lone villain. It may just show that dietary patterns matter more than internet nutrition likes to admit. This is where things get messy, because seed oils are often present in foods that really are associated with worse health outcomes. But correlation is not the same thing as causation. If a person eats a diet full of fried foods, sugary snacks, low-fiber packaged meals, and restaurant food, the presence of seed oils in that diet does not mean seed oils are the sole reason the diet is unhealthy. They may be part of the picture, but they are not the entire picture. And if we blame everything on one ingredient, we stop seeing the larger system that actually shapes health. Now, with that said, are there situations where seed oils can become more problematic? Yes, and this is where the conversation gets more legitimate. Unsaturated fats are chemically more vulnerable than saturated fats. That's one of the trade-offs. They're often better for blood lipids when replacing saturated fat in the diet, but they're also more prone to oxidation under certain conditions. What conditions? High heat, repeated heating, prolonged exposure to oxygen, long storage under poor conditions, industrial processing, and especially repeated frying. When oils rich in polyunsaturated fats are heated again and again, especially in deep frying environments, they can degrade. They can form oxidation products, including compounds like aldehydes. And that is not a made-up concern, that is a real chemistry issue. Fresh oil used properly is one thing. Old oil used over and over at very high temperatures is another thing. That difference matters. If a restaurant fryer is running all day, if oil is reheated repeatedly, if food is constantly being dropped into it, if the oil is exposed to heat and oxygen over and over again, you are no longer talking about the same product you poured out of a new bottle. And the same idea applies to heavily processed foods that sit for long periods and rely on stability, packaging, additives, and industrial handling to stay shelf-ready. This is one reason the seed oil debate feels so confusing. People are often arguing about totally different things while using the same words. One person is talking about nutritional biochemistry, another is talking about industrial food manufacturing, another is talking about restaurant frying, another is talking about inflammation, another is talking about ancestral eating, another is talking about weight loss. No wonder the debate sounds chaotic. The category is broad. The uses are different. The health effects depend on context. So let's simplify it. If you are using a reasonable amount of fresh seed oil at home, stored properly, used sensibly, and included within an overall healthy diet, the evidence does not support treating it like poison. That is the calm evidence-based answer. But if most of your seed oil intake is coming from deep-fried fast food, packaged snacks, and heavily processed convenience food, then yes, that pattern deserves concern, not because the oil is magically evil, but because the food context is poor, and because repeated heating and industrial use can create a very different health picture than home cooking. Now let's talk about another common claim. People often say, well, humans never used these oils before, so they must be unnatural and harmful. This argument sounds appealing, but it's not enough on its own. Newer does not automatically mean dangerous, and traditional does not automatically mean healthier. Plenty of traditional diets included high levels of saturated fat, salt-preserved foods, low produce intake or seasonal nutrient limitations, and plenty of modern foods are improvements. So instead of asking, did our ancestors eat this exact oil? A better question is, what happens when people consume it in real diets, and compared to what? That last part is huge. Compared to what? Nutrition is almost never about a food in isolation, it's about replacement. If you replace trans fats with unsaturated oils, that is one outcome. If you replace some saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat, that is another outcome. If you add seed oils on top of an already excessive calorie intake, that's something else. If you use them in ultra-processed junk food, that's another situation entirely. And if you swap one fear-driven extreme for another, like replacing everything with large amounts of butter because it feels more natural, that has consequences too. This is why nuance matters more than slogans. Now where do omega-3 fats fit into this? Because this is another place where people get confused. Omega-6 and omega-3 fats are both important, but many modern diets contain a lot more omega-6 relative to omega-3. That imbalance gets blamed entirely on seed oils, but the practical fix is usually not to obsessively eliminate all omega-6. It's to increase omega-3 rich foods and improve the overall diet. That means fatty fish. That means walnuts. That means flax, chia, and other sources depending on your dietary pattern. The goal is not nutritional paranoia. The goal is balance. So if someone is eating a lot of processed food, very little seafood, very little whole food, and almost no omega-3 sources, then yes, their overall fatty acid pattern may be less than ideal. But again, that does not automatically mean all seed oils are the core problem. It means the whole diet needs attention, and that brings us to the practical question: what should you actually do? Because this debate becomes exhausting when it never lands in real life. Here's the simplest version: don't panic about seed oils in every form. Don't treat them like a health food halo either. Use context, use common sense. If you cook at home, prioritize overall dietary quality first. That means more whole foods, more vegetables, more legumes, more fruit, more minimally processed proteins, more fiber, more omega-3 rich foods. And when it comes to cooking fats, choose ones that make sense for the job. Extra virgin olive oil is a very strong choice for most people. It has one of the best evidence profiles overall. It contains mostly monounsaturated fat, and also brings polyphenols, which is something seed oils generally do not provide in the same way. That makes olive oil special. Not because every other oil is toxic, but because olive oil combines a favorable fat profile with bioactive compounds that appear to support health. So if you're asking what's the safest, smartest everyday option, extra virgin olive oil is a great answer. Avocado oil can also work well. And depending on the use, other oils can fit too. But if your question is, what should be my default? Olive oil earns that spot for a reason. At the same time, don't overcorrect into thinking butter is automatically healthier just because it feels old-fashioned. Butter is not a superfood. It can fit in moderation, but building your entire fat strategy around saturated fat because you're scared of seed oils is not where the best evidence points. This is also where food quality matters more than labels. A home-cooked meal with vegetables, beans, fish, herbs, and a reasonable amount of oil is not in the same universe as a bag of fried snack food just because both contain fat. Your body experiences patterns, not hashtags. And one of the biggest mistakes people make in nutrition is searching for a single ingredient to worship or blame. Seed oils did not create the chronic disease crisis all by themselves, and removing them alone will not fix a poor diet if everything else stays the same. If someone stops eating seed oils but keeps eating low-fiber, high-calorie, nutrient-poor food, they have not solved the core problem, they've just changed the branding. So, are seed oils good or bad for you? Here's the honest answer: they are not inherently toxic. They are not automatically inflammatory in the way they're often described online. And in human research, replacing saturated fat with unsaturated fat has generally looked favorable for heart health. But that does not mean all uses of seed oils are equal. Repeatedly heated frying oils are a real concern. Heavily processed foods built around these oils can be part of unhealthy dietary patterns. And when people lump all of that together and call it the seed oil problem, they're mixing a real issue with an exaggerated one. That's why the debate feels so loud. There's a grain of truth inside a much bigger oversimplification. And once you separate those pieces, the picture becomes much clearer. Fear says, these oils are poison. Science says, not so fast. Fear says, if it's in processed food, it must be the root cause. Science says, look at the whole dietary pattern. Fear says, go back to butter and everything gets fixed. Science says, compare health outcomes carefully and pay attention to what replaces what. That's the real divide here. Science versus fear is not really a battle between one oil and another. It's a battle between simplistic stories and evidence-based thinking. And evidence-based thinking is often less dramatic. It's less viral, but it's also more useful. Because it helps you make choices you can actually live with. If you want the smartest takeaway from all of this, let it be this: eat fewer ultra-processed foods. Be cautious with deep-fried foods, especially foods likely cooked in repeatedly heated oil. Use fresh oils properly. Prioritize olive oil when it makes sense. Get more omega-3 rich foods into your diet, and stop letting nutrition debates trick you into thinking one ingredient explains everything. Health is built on patterns repeated over time, not on one bottle in your pantry. So if you've been feeling confused by the seed oil debate, that confusion makes sense. The conversation online has been louder than it has been careful. But once you strip away the fear, the science becomes a lot easier to understand. Seed oils are not the monster they've been made out to be. They're also not a free pass to ignore food quality. And that middle ground, even if it's less exciting, is where the truth usually lives. I'm Dr. Sophie Hale. And if you want more straight answers on nutrition without the noise, stay with me, because your health decisions should be built on clarity, not panic. And once you know how to separate mechanism from myth, and evidence from emotion, a lot of these food controversies start to lose their power. Thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Sophie Hale, and I'll see you next time.